Today's episode is brought to you by First National Bank, one of the country's most recognized brands and a bank synonymous with innovation. Now, over and above providing personal, private, business, commercial, and corporate banking services to millions of customers across the country, FNB has been a long-time partner to businesses across the spectrum. And importantly, they're equally committed to supporting the tech startup ecosystem in creating jobs, growing the economy, and establishing South Africa as a major player in tech innovation and investment. To find out more about how they do this and how they want to support your business, visit fnb.co.za. Welcome to the Startup Club podcast, where we share the journeys of invention, failure, resilience, and triumph of some of South Africa's foremost tech startup founders and investors. I'm Matthew Marsden, founder of Startup Club ZA, and on the show today, Kimberley Taylor, founder and CEO of Loop, the trailblazing delivery management platform that's empowering big-name companies across the country to optimize and scale their logistics infrastructure. What started as a third-year university project in 2015, Loop has since grown to raise meaningful investment, build a team of 21 employees, and serve big-name enterprise clients across South Africa.
So it just didn't really work anymore. And, I think the team started to grow and we just really, I think, got deliberate about, cool, this business, this next chapter, what space, who are we selling to?
According to MasterCard, by the end of last year, online retail had grown 35% year on year to 55 billion rand. And it shows little signs of slowing down in South Africa. And the relentless rise of e-commerce is occurring at the same time as in-person retail stagnates, with many South Africans shifting their everyday consumer spend online. Think of fast-moving goods and even groceries. But powering this shift is a wave of back-end tech and supply chain infrastructure that allows the items we order online to arrive directly at our door, seemingly in faster times than ever before. And at the heart of that efficiency lies the challenge of every company needing to figure out the best route to deliver goods quickly to the end customer and allowing the customer to actually track how far away the package is. And whilst today the idea of standing on the corner and tracking a delivery bike on your phone may seem like normal behavior, back in 2015, there was little tech enabling the sequencing of stops or tracking where deliveries were on the route. It was that problem that spurred today's guest, Kimberley Taylor, the founder of Loop, to come up with a route optimization solution, and one that no one could quite imagine how transformative it would be. Since its founding in 2015, Loop has gone on to raise meaningful investment, built a team of 21 employees, and serve a host of big-name last-mile delivery clients, including the likes of Nandos, OneCart, and even helping your Checkers Sixty60 driver arrive at your door. But of course, it didn't start there. Kimberley Taylor was born in Edenvale, Johannesburg, the daughter of a single mom and immigrant that founded her own nursery school. It was this upbringing that taught Kim resilience, independence, and self-reliance. And on finishing school, she embarked on an engineering degree at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg to fuel her passion for problem solving. Now, it was during her third year that she was tasked with developing a solution to shorten the distance between cities for a traveling salesman. And unlike her fellow students though, this project would later unwittingly inspire the concept of her very first tech venture that would go on to solve real-world problems in the South African logistics space and change the trajectory of her life forever.
It's interesting. I do have some good memories of growing up, but there are a lot more maybe really difficult memories.
Sure.
I look back now and I love every single chapter that I had growing up, and I can appreciate that the adults in my life were just doing the best that they could at the time. But I probably would call a lot of those chapters chaos. Like my mom was married to a man for a while, who actually was like my my real dad, not my biological dad. But struggled with bipolar, drug abuse. And so you can imagine our household was like quite chaotic most of the time. And it's interesting, like, you know, I think he was in some ways a great dad, very supportive and like sensitive, very sensitive. Like, you know, like I had a very amazing like connection with him, but like obviously all of these things also brought about like a lot of chaos. And as a child, you're not really in control of the environment sometimes that you grow up in. But I think, you know, it's interesting. I think I always say like those chapters before 21, which is when I was starting the business, like all helped me like build this thing of resilience, right? Which I think has been such a big part of my journey since then. And this like feeling from like a little girl that like whatever life threw at me, I could like take it and make it better. Like on the other side of that like really tough thing, like I'm going to help other people who are struggling with this. You know, I used to write a lot as a little girl. I would write, I like wrote a lot.
Sure.
And so it's amazing sometimes going back and looking at like that little girl who, you know, like would write and say like, I need to work through this because I need to help other like little girls work through this. So, you know, I think it's somehow like this ability to always like see the world not as it was, but like how it could be, just has always been inbred in me, right? Like I'm not afraid of problems or like anything that like life could bring. You know, I see them as like opportunities, I guess.
And I think it would be only natural in that environment to be quite an introvert. Would you describe it? I mean, how would you describe Kim's personality? Did you like the limelight? Were you quite bubbly?
I was bubbly, and I think in an effort to hide a lot of what was going on. So I was very embarrassed. Like, you know, like as a kid, you don't want people to come and sleep over and like see what's like your home life is like. So I think actually I was very bubbly. Like, I mean, I was head girl in high school. So I was like hockey team captain, like people like thought I was really friendly, but on the inside, you know, like I was struggling with like an eating disorder, like all of these things. I think I internalized a lot and like suppressed a lot of what was going on, which I think inevitably like also there are like unhealthy coping mechanisms that come out. But actually, I was quite bubbly. Like, I think, like, in an effort to just kind of, like,
distract
mask.
even ourselves, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks for being vulnerable, Kim. I know it's not easy to always talk about that stuff. Talk to us very briefly. You know, some kids are quite enterprising when they're youngsters, right? They set up a small stand maybe on the road. I think I remember trying that once or twice, and didn't work. So I think I felt so defeated and never did it again. But talk to us. Were you enterprising? Were you that entrepreneur? Trying things, market days? What?
I think I don't know if I was enterprising. I definitely loved creating. So like I spent a lot of time in my room building things, painting. So I've always had maybe a very creative, like experimental, you know. I was actually just this morning I was reflecting on like how I was as a little girl. I used to take my Barbies and then create a parachute, and I wanted them to fly. Like I was always trying to like build and create things. So I think that was naturally there. I don't remember ever trying to make money.
Okay. Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And was there something so maybe it wasn't a business person, because I don't think most kids grow up going, I want to be an entrepreneur necessarily. They become innately good problem solvers and stuff flies from there. But what did Kim want to be? Was there something that you wanted to be? Doctor, accountant?
No, not at all. Yeah? I didn't know what I wanted to be. Okay. I think growing up with a single mom, what was important to me was having independence. Like I loved art, I loved math, so there's lots of things that interest me. And at university I applied for art, general business BCom and chemical engineering. And I chose chemical engineering because I thought that it gave me the most options post-varsity of being an engineer, but also still working in business was what I understood I could still do. And I think I love that optionality, and probably also the ability to be financially independent. Just understanding like maybe the space where I had come from.
Yeah. So 2 steps back, you do matriculate Edenvale High School.
Yes.
Head girl, captain of the hockey team, lover of math, art, presumably matriculated well, and so you've got a few options study-wise. You choose chemical engineering at Wits, and was the goal to become a chemical engineer then, or was it still discovering, and figuring out what that might lead to?
I think still discovering.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel like I was ever sure. I did fall in love with engineering as I went. I mean, I don't know if necessarily chemical engineering, but I loved the problem solving parts of engineering, the process. Really, you're a process engineer. And I really love that way of thinking through logic and flows. And a lot of times you get asked questions where you don't have all the inputs and you have to make really smart assumptions. So I really enjoyed that kind of like, here's A, you need to get to B. It doesn't matter. You just need to show you're working, right, for how you get to B as logically as possible. So
it's funny you use that example, Kim, because now you literally are helping folks go from A to B, and we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. It's this is quite a unique episode in the sense that when we talk to a lot of founders, they ordinarily have had some career in a traditional sense.
Yeah.
Even maybe starting a venture, and then we interview them in kind of second or third venture. Yours is quite an atypical career, and so I think that's why we're really excited to have you on the show today. Just talk about that. You stumble upon a problem, and I wanted you to maybe just expand on the context of all of this, because I did a lot of projects in university. None of them became businesses, right? I cared about the grades and then I moved on. But you had quite an interesting project presented to you, and it's become the foundation of what you do day to day. So maybe give us some context to what happened.
So, I mean, it was a subject, numerical methods. It's a subject that it's not really core to chemical engineering. You share it with the mechanical, industrial, and aeronautical engineers. We all do this class together. And, I met a professor at Wits the other day who he told me any lecturer who gets those classes normally is unhappy. It's like you have to teach all these engineers this course that they don't really care about. And so it really is a bit of coding and maths. And there was a project. There were 9 questions on the project. And this was just one of the questions. I mean, it was literally like a 1 mark kind of question.
Sure.
And I don't know why, I think I'm innately curious. And I do like question things, but I was just interested. It really just piqued my curiosity. I was like, this seems like a really helpful, like practical algorithm, right? You can use this, and then just, I guess, I don't know, somehow like asking the question, following that by asking a question to say, just asking someone in the logistics space, do you use this? Like, how do your drivers know?
And so quickly for context, the problem you're referring to here is the traveling salesman.
Yes.
And so if you can describe for our listeners very briefly, and I've seen you present on this a few times, so maybe I know it's fresh in mind.
Yes.
What is that problem? And then, of course, how you see a real world application there.
Yeah. So the traveling salesman problem is basically, it's if you have, I think the typical problem goes, if a traveling salesman has 10 different cities to travel to, what is the best sequence to do those stops in that makes him drive the shortest distance? Right? So it's typically called the traveling salesman problem. But if you think about in deliveries, where delivery drivers have 10, 20, 50 stops to go to, it's what is the best sequence to do those stops that I minimize the amounts I drive. And which is it's really difficult problem to solve. I mean, and why, if you have 10 stops, there are something like 3.9 million possible ways you can do those 10 stops. When you add just one stop to that 11 stops, it goes up to 39 million. At 20 stops, it's 2 with 18 zeros.
Just exponential.
I mean, it's a really difficult problem to solve and find the best solution. Too.
And so again, just contextually, this is 2015. You're doing your third year of engineering.
Yeah.
You know, most of us are kind of figuring it out and probably thinking about job applications for our honors year if we're going to go on to do honors. Did you presumably solve the problem? Did you write an algorithm that worked and you were like, oh?
So I wrote an algorithm that worked.
Sure.
I don't know if it's the best algorithm. It's an algorithm that got me to the best answer for those 10 stops. You know, since then we've had to optimize it and do certain things because as you start getting to 20, 50, 80 stops, which is what courier companies do, you need to add a lot more smarts into it. But yeah, so I mean, I wrote that first algorithm. And
so talk to me then about this evolution of Kim submitting the project. Presumably, I mean, I hope you scored highly, right? But presumably you submit this project, and you talk to me about the next couple of months. How does this evolve from a project university to something you actually just keep feeding the curiosity of and eventually becomes a venture?
Yeah, so I mean, I spent my fourth year first asking that question. I remember we drew some stuff on a piece of paper, just carried on asking questions about the space, speaking to different people who were in the space to understand the problems that they had.
And were they willing? I mean, you were university students, right?
Yeah.
Approaching them with a project.
Yeah, so mostly, to be honest. And one, I was very grateful. I had been really nice to my peers, year 1 to 3, because there were a couple of university classes I missed and people would take notes for me. So, I mean, I really was trying to understand this problem further in parallel to trying to finish my fourth year at university. And I think, I don't know. I think there were so many different companies we came across, like Nampak or Buco. Like there were all of these that someone there was open to having a conversation, to allowing us to come see their warehouse, or and you just spend a little bit of time, and if you just listen, you kind of hear the phone ringing incessantly, like you see their process flow. And I think in logistics and operations, people work really hard, and they kind of just like, if they don't have something, they'll just manual hard code figure it out to make sure that the wheels keep turning. And sometimes, and so that's what I think was what was really nice, is to come into those environments and say, but you don't need to have it on a pegboard, your drivers don't need to start with stacks of paper. Like there could be a really good alternative to how they're operating. And
so two questions I have for you. Firstly, there was nothing else that was optimizing this for these big courier players? Was it really so pen, paper, manual?
So I think that there definitely were some players in the market doing some things. Absolutely. Kawabanga then, now Loop, was not the first to market, right? This is, and I think that's what's so interesting about the space and about ideas, right? Even if somebody has baked a cake, there are other ways to bake cakes. There are better ways, there are more delicious ways, there are like better ways to serve the cake. I think that's what's really amazing about the space, is there you can serve people much better. You can, and you start with an idea, but that's just like high level, really. When you get into the detail, and that's what I love, is like all the micro problems that exist in the space, and like truly understanding them and understanding how to, like gain more value from that part in the supply chain. I think that's where I think that's what we evolved and we did really well, is we just continued to get into the detail of the space and say, how do we make that better and that better and that better and that better? So
Amazing.
it's
So Kim, you're obviously spinning out this project now into something that's becoming quite tangible, and you're potentially engaging what would become users and customers. You've mentioned we, and you founded this business with somebody.
Yes, yeah. So it was a co-founder journey to start with, which is always really nice. It's nice to feed off of different people's energies. We're both first-time founders, which also comes with lots of difficulties and navigating what founding a business is really stressful. The beginning parts of a business are really stressful. Cash flow, learning how to negotiate with big clients, all of these things, take its toll.
Sure.
And I think ultimately, like what we see in lots of co-founder journeys, there is a separation. And fortunately, whatever it is, that has been a part of my journey as well.
The reality is that, and I think even I founded a business with co-founders. Ultimately, you just lose alignment sometimes, right? And so I think the business takes a different shape. And that's actually okay. It's just about recognizing, right? So that's where when the right, and I think that's what becomes so challenging in the founder journey, is when is the right time to step in or step out or have those conversations.
Absolutely.
But thanks for sharing that, Kim. So talk to us about, because I'm so curious, that initial step from idea to execution. We have got countless existing, current founders who are working on projects, and they've gone into prototyping and are now looking to take that to market. You've taken really what is quite a high level idea that tons of other students would have been working on, and somehow look to commercialize this. So you spent 2016, your honors year, actually engaging with folks in a space that you think there's applicability here in the logistics space, and meeting with them, and by some grace, they are willing to actually take these meetings, and you get all these privied insights. The business is initially called Kawabanga, which I think is such a cool name, by the way. I think that's from a show, right? That is from a show when we were kids.
It is. But my co-founder and I at the time just thought, how funny will it be to have a CEO say, we're working with Kawabanga?
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's since changed, I'm sure, for good reason, and maybe we'll discuss that. But now talk to us again. You're having these conversations with clients or potential clients in terms of building product. What does that look like? So
there's no product being built, and I sometimes look back and I'm like, I was just so naive. I mean, crazy, right? Like I just had no experience in building tech. Neither did my co-founder at the time. It's just so brave and or naive. I don't know what word you want to use. And it really was this presentation, of this piece of tech that was going to be built. That's all it was. And kind of trying to get people to sign letters of intent to work with us once this piece of tech would be built, right? And I don't know if it's that, you just meet some entrepreneurs and you just somehow believe them that they're going to make this work. I've met a couple where you just like,
I back this person.
You're delusional, but I
want to come on the ride.
You're going to do it. And so I don't know if that's what, I had at the time. Taste Holdings, I cold called the IT exec of Taste Holdings and got a meeting with him.
Amazing.
And he was also an engineer, and I pitched to him, and he said to me, I've asked him before, why did you say yes? Because he was actually the first client we had, not just a letter of intent, but we will, this is how much
if you
pay.
build this, we will pay you.
Yeah. Like a little bit more concrete than a letter of intent, which wasn't binding. And he said I know he said for an engineer, I had so much EQ or something that he said to me, and he just believed that this thing would be built. And so no product, which
amazing
is
No, it's unheard
Weird.
of, right?
It is.
And you'd recommend otherwise, I think, to founders today, but to at least get something prototype, sort of no code out there. But these were not options 7 years ago. They really weren't. You hard coded or it was nix.
Yeah.
Taste Holdings, again, for the relevance of our audience who don't know, the big food group holding company behind the likes of Domino's. And so Kim has cold called the head of IT, which is, I think, a great lesson for founders. If you're not willing to sometimes pick up the phone, emails don't always work, and neither does LinkedIn outreach. But that's a really powerful illustration. So Kim, tell us, you're engaging with this individual, and they're saying, actually, if you build this thing, we'd pay you for it.
Yeah.
Presumably, you've turned down job offers as well at the same time. I mean, presumably you're not side hustling and getting paid loads. That's buying you the flexibility to explore all of these options. What does this look like to actually getting paid and being able to build this? And talk to us about those early days.
So the contract was, I think, signed like August 2016. Like that's when those conversations with Taste Holdings. So I'm still studying.
Yes.
I had a bursary with a company called Fleur. And that's who I was meant to go and start working with in the January. I remember them messaging and they didn't have a job for me yet, which freaked me out. So I was like, oh my goodness, like now I haven't applied for any internships. And I actually ended up working at my mom's nursery school for the first, I think, January and February. I worked at my mom's nursery school at the 5-year-old. So it was a lot of fun. Very exhausting, but that kind of allowed me to, I guess, continue. Now this is 2017, I'm out of university. By the March, I had a job at Fleur Daniels, and I worked, I think, for a month or two full-time and then moved to part-time. And I said to them, I had this other business that I wanted to work on. Could I work part-time, right? Which is also very cheeky.
Sure,
I mean, just like
especially out of your new grad.
Yeah, like, I'm working on this other business. And I think, even when I eventually said to them, by the June, we had an investor, Lightstone, had invested in the company. When I said to them, well, now I need to resign, they were like, just take a sabbatical. You'll be back. Like, they're like, take a 6-month sabbatical. You'll come back, not really believing. They're like, yeah, Kim, we'll get you, just take a break, go do that. We'll have a job for you when you fail.
Listen, pretty remarkable though, Kim, right? Yeah. Because you've only worked for the company for 3 months. Now they're offering you a 6-month sabbatical. Doesn't quite happen.
Yeah.
But I think maybe a mark of the way you deal with people.
I had a great manager as well, to be honest, who was output based. And so, I can work quite hard, and I knew if I got my work done, I could leave and work on my business. So I think these are all things that I think tie into what really made those beginning months easy.
You've mentioned raising some capital. And again, this is not that many months after getting that initial letter of intent and proper, this is what we pay you from Domino's. And this is from Lightstone.
Yes.
Your first investor. Talk to us about how you've gone about firstly meeting the team there and just what that's like. Because obviously navigating the first investment into a venture is so hard for first-time founders. And you don't have the context here of even much corporate dealing. Just being in a traditional business for a couple of years. So talk to us about that process. How was it? Was it intimidating?
Yeah.
How did you actually get that over the line?
So in parallel, in 2016, in parallel to talking to clients, I spoke to anyone, we both did. I mean, anyone who could be a potential investor. So it was almost like in parallel, try to find an investor, try to find a client.
And who?
I mean, literally anyone. Ask my friends, parents, do they know anyone who has money? Amazing. My mom was had nursery school. There was no corporate contacts. So it was friends. It was, Flip. I think on his side, he had a lot more corporate type contacts. Sure. And I had a boyfriend at the time who worked at Liberty and he had, so it was really just asking, and I think all of it, you get a lot of I remember this one guy from McKinsey was like, oh, no, guys, like, this is, this is not going to work. Please, these are your competitors, blah, blah, blah. But just also so helpful because it helps you understand what are those no's going to be and how to answer them. And so, but then like when Lightstone comes, which again was just through a mutual contact, to be honest, they were amazing. I think they understood that, these were two first-time founders, which was helpful. And we had the most incredible mentor. The CFO of Lightstone was Damien McCann. And, like, he really mentored through this business. And, like, I can't tell you how much of the success of this business is, like, according to, like, his leadership and management style and patience and... I look now back and at the types of problems that have come up in other entrepreneurial journeys and the mistakes that they've made, that I know I would have made those same mistakes. And I didn't, because I had Damien, who really, knew when to say, okay, like let me make mistakes, but then you went to say, okay, now you need to listen, like this is now a pattern, like we really need to clean up this part. Sure. So it made that journey like I think as easy as it could be, but yeah, it's a big jump from like I'd worked in a corporate for a month or 2 months full time. I had no idea about KPIs and just anything finance related. So it was just really a big jump. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously hindsight's beautiful. Please don't disclose anything to do with terms and whatnot. But did you think it was a good deal for a first time?
Yeah, I do think it was a good deal. I would have negotiated a bit harder, and maybe talks to the difference between the founder and I. I think I'm a lot more of a harder, and maybe at times is like just I used my naivety to like negotiate harder, right? You ask. I maybe was braver to ask for things so, but I think it was a pretty fair deal for, people who had really one contract,
So presumably, and I remember this happening to me, all of a sudden there's money in the bank account. And now you're going, okay, we've got to deliver on product. Presumably you have to hire a team. Someone got to take this to market. And again, you've got very little context as to how that's been done in the past. How did you navigate that? I mean, you've obviously got a wonderful mentor. That's great. Yeah. I also just want to ask you about, naturally, so much of the success, I'm sure, behind what is now Loop has been that early team.
Yeah.
And so how do you attract, these are maybe answer the first question, and then I'll get into how you attract those people, right?
So, I mean, we didn't hire people until 2019, I think. So the first 2 years
later,
and so a lot of it, to be honest, was just a lot of logic. A lot of, I think one of the things I'm really good at is like, how do we really make this money, like stretch it, make it last? I think we also had we used an outsourced development company who were good at, asking, why do you need to build this feature? Is a client going to pay for it? So, it's just, I think what I've seen some entrepreneurs and founders do is you think that you should build everything, right? And it's really about being so deliberate with every single little feature and protecting. And for me, it was a lot of money. I felt deeply responsible for this money, even though I didn't have to pay it back, but I felt this weight. It really was a very heavy weight on me that, I need to now make this money back for these people. And so just navigated it like very, very deliberately. Why are we building this? Build as little as we can. How much can we make manual? How much can we test before, how much can I do myself? So, I mean, dashboards and things like that. I went and learnt, a tool that was free to use that instead of having to build something.
Of course.
And so I think that was, a lot of the beginning stages is negotiating. So as a second client came on, it was, okay, well, you want that feature, that's something that's very specific to you. We can't pay for that.
Sure.
So it's like using, just being so strict with how you spend that money.
Frugal is probably
frugal
the word, right?
is the right word.
And I think one of the marks of great founders is they see investment as this like stewardship. It's this need to now go, wow, I haven't just been given the license to figure this out, and actually, if nothing works, it's all good. Like that was the risk my investors took. It's this proper responsibility to want to say, these are not partners. I'm a steward of their finance. I need to almost return on this. I need to return on this, even before maybe my imminent needs and wants right now. But that makes a great founder and a highly backable founder. Investors want to work with that founder. Yeah. So kudos to you for even seeing that. And again, just contextually, 2017, and dare me for asking, Kim, how old are you at this point?
I'm 29 now.
Yes.
So, but 2017, I would be
24.
23 or 24, something like that. Yeah.
So it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. 23.
EQ, right? At EQ and IQ at that age to just figure this out and navigate. But I think what valuable lessons.
I think coming from a background of not having money also it's like you don't waste, right? You just, I think I don't know if that attributes, I don't know if I had a different background, but it might be. Everything
adds up, right? Nothing's lost there. So you do talk about bringing on a couple more clients, right? Taste being the first, you've now rolled out this, it's not even a demo, it's going live with them, right? And so, and seemingly working. Talk to us about the next few clients that have come on. Who were they exactly?
So Nandos was next. And and that was, literally 2 weeks into going live with Domino's, I was like, cool, we have data. Now this presentation where I think all of these things will happen, now I have proper data. Like this is how we can actually create value for these businesses. At the end of the day, business is simple, right? It's like someone's going to pay for something, but how do you give them more value for that? So, these are like, I feel like there's
I love that reality check, to be honest.
It's like, it's if you're not giving more value than you're asking for, no one's going to pay for this.
Sure.
And I built a business case, and that's what helped me land the next clients. Again, can I tell you, I did everything to get in front of Nando's, and eventually it came from my mom's friend's friend worked as a lawyer in Nando's, and I asked him to share the business case with someone. So it's just like
that
anything.
Network effect, right? And the power. Yeah, it's such a great illustration of the hustle to get in front of the right people. But I often think that's where a lot of founders just lose. Just don't have that staying power to keep asking and finding the right route to the right person. Thanks for listening. We're going to take a quick break. And if you're enjoying today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us boost our reach. I'm Matthew Marsden, and this is the Startup Club podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by First National Bank, one of the country's most recognized brands and a bank synonymous with innovation. Now, over and above providing personal, private, business, commercial, and corporate banking services to millions of customers across the country, FNB has been a long-time partner to businesses across the spectrum. And importantly, they're equally committed to supporting the tech startup ecosystem in creating jobs, growing the economy, and establishing South Africa as a major player in tech innovation and investment. To find out more about how they do this and how they want to support your business, visit fnb.co.za. Yeah, so Kim, 2018, you've obviously, the business is growing in profile and you're growing in profile. And I wanted to ask you, how does that change things? Presumably fantastic. And now you no longer need to introduce yourself for the business when you're entering a new room, but that comes with its own pressures, downsides, deliverables. Maybe talk to us about, as the business now is growing up a little.
So it's so funny you say that, because I definitely don't feel like that happened maybe until like last year. Okay. I don't feel like, because marketing wasn't a strong point of mine, actually Cowabunga had like a 1-page website, so which we only developed because that we won that MTN App of the Year award.
Sure, you had to.
Yeah. But in some ways you do feel it was like 2018 was, I think, the first time we broke even, right? It's like there is some sort of progress, and Nando's is such an amazing client to have. I mean, amazing people and values and, you know, people to work with, right? And be on that journey with, of like building something. And I think we started opening up in Nando's Qatar. Those conversations started. But also, I mean, really stressful because, you know, cash flow, I you know, probably taken more loans since then. You know, you're constantly hitting cash flow problems, you know, because you don't break even immediately. So the first money you ask for, I mean, just double that, like, and you need that again in a year. And so combination of loans and losing equity, etc. And just the stresses of tech and meeting customer demands and training, all of these like other auxiliary things that you don't really know or conceive of. You think you're going to build a piece of tech and you're going to sell it, but there's so much more to it. Drivers don't use your system, then you don't get the results. So, you know, is this a user issue? Is it a tech issue? Is it a hardware issue? You know, so it's just a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights, a lot of like, it felt like a lot of conflict, you know, and it might just had been that like time, but it was, you know, not easy. It's a lot of hard work. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. I think it absolutely does. And I think I appreciate just the transparency, because I think every founder is going through that. Every founder, despite the articles and despite the public, like, just trying to figure out how to get to break even, how to get to profitability.
Yes.
Does this become easier in time?
Yeah.
Big question marks. When did you guys bring on your first hires?
I'm sure it was end of 2018, beginning 2019. Okay. It's somewhere there, and it was either, I don't know if it's like, because there's like 3 people that kind of started similar times. Someone to help with training, because training became a big thing. How do you train all these stores? I mean, it's you know, lots of Nando's stores, so it's not you training one team. Training was a big thing. We hired our first developer, a junior developer, which, because it's all you can afford.
Yes.
You need some technical help, and so you like the you know, the cheapest hire in terms of we can't afford a senior developer, which also has its difficulties, right? Absolutely. I mean, you actually really need a senior developer, and you just don't know these things. And then someone to help with supporting, you know, just general, like, hey, the system's not working. Because that's another part. I mean, I was on hundreds of WhatsApp groups, right? Answering questions like all the time, all hours of the night. All these things you don't really conceive of, which is like, in hindsight, it's such an amazing part. Like, I knew every single Nando's driver's name, you know. I would still get like these, like, you know, happy Sunday, like, messages from them. So it's an interesting time, but it's exhausting, you know, like it's taking everything from you constantly. And you kind of want to break sometimes.
I just love the insight. I just love the candid insight, because that's the stuff that people don't see from the outside. They might see the publicity, but you don't get the, man, there's Kim at 1 a.m. talking to this driver. Talk to us about, so let's maybe fast forward a little bit to COVID. And COVID, of course, for most last mile delivery businesses was pretty explosive. Regardless, courier, food, almost industry agnostic. And naturally, you are an API and enabler into a lot of that infrastructure. Talk to us maybe pre-COVID, COVID hits, and then what that does to the business.
So, I mean, this is where these are things I could never replicate, right? You can't replicate COVID happening in your business, being in the last mile delivery space. And so that's why I'm always very tentative to mention what I could redo again if I started a business or not. And it was really spectacular, and like COVID is very difficult for lots of people, but in a way, to have had a last mile delivery platform that was 3 years old at this point, and COVID hits, and now everyone is looking for these pieces of tech, it really just scaled us, going from 30 deliveries to 300 to 3,000. It's just 30,000. It's just that scale happened, which is such a gift. Also, absolutely terrifying, because tech scaling is terrifying. I mean, our tech broke during that period because there was so much debt. I didn't have those outsourced developers. I had this one single junior dev, no co-founder. So there's a lot of things that were very different at this point in time in the business. And the weight, right? I only maybe solely carrying the weight of the loans in the business, and you already know how I feel about people's money.
Sure.
And so it was, so as much as it is a gift, it was probably one of the most difficult times in this business. Second to maybe this year, for different reasons. Is just I'm maybe 24, 25 at this stage. I've had to grow up quite quickly early on in my life, and now go from, and I've always worked hard, and then I remember just the responsibility just felt immense, and all I wanted to do was be a 24, 25-year-old and just be a kid, and so it was and I'm completely digressing.
No, by all means.
But it was a spectacular time, a great time, and I feel so privileged for our tech to experience that sort of scale that came with COVID in this last mile delivery space, because now we have that post-traumatic stress from that, and we know we are so focused on stability and scalability of the platform. I mean, it's number one priority all the time, because we understand the scale that can happen in the space, and it just naturally continues to grow. It's a very cool space to be in.
Talk to us about what's happened since. It's obviously been a busy couple of years. For Loop, for you.
So I mean,
and excuse me, before we say that, I'm just going to preface, you've changed the name.
Yes.
So up until this point, it was still Kawabanga.
Yes.
And so 2021 comes, you change the name to Loop. Was that just almost the sign of the business growing up, or was there a need to do that?
I think so. It was, I think we were entering a new chapter. I think we rebuilt the platform. That is a big change in the business. Just understanding all that we did before, and tech is, you do need to upgrade it all the time. Unfortunately, it's part of the process. Cowabunga was such a cool name, and it had its place, and it was an amazing part of the journey, but actually it didn't work a lot of the time. I mean, we had a lot of people, who didn't understand the cultural context of what Cowabunga means, and it was awkward to pronounce, and so
I'm sure Bunga came up a lot, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness, the way people pronounced it.
Yes.
So it just didn't really work anymore, and I think the team started to grow, and we just really, I think, got deliberate about this business, this next chapter, what space, who we selling to, where, I think I feel into a lot of what feels right, and you get a sense of the market, but I think we were a lot more strategic about, okay, cool, we can see this is where the market, we really started understanding things in detail and being more deliberate about that scaling forward.
Yeah, awesome. I think, I've got some questions around what Loop looks like today, and especially the short term. I know there's some exciting things on the horizon. But like I mentioned, I think there was such an interesting call from our audience to have you on the show. And so I want to take that opportunity in maybe a slightly different way to the way that we normally do podcasts. And just ask you a couple of questions, maybe about the journey and your thoughts on on kind of the space at the moment. Talk to us about this idea that building in South Africa, because a lot of founders are going to be very tempted to almost build globally from day one. Right. And I know you've already spoken to this idea of just actually answering problems with the companies and the products you build. But some people also say, well, South Africa's not big enough. Why would you build a product here? And of course you've done that and in some respects hacked your way into where you are now. But what are your thoughts on the South African tech opportunity, generally speaking?
I mean, I feel like there's so much opportunity. I think it's such the size of South Africa is not as big as some other markets, but there is so much room for growth and opportunities. There's so many markets that are not serviced, that are not understood, and if you look at our competitors, who a lot of them now sit internationally, who are trying to enter the market, their tech doesn't understand the nuances of the driver behavior issues we have, the security issues. There's things about being in this country and understanding the unique problems that open up unique opportunities to make money from. And so I definitely think there's still lots of opportunity. Our goal is to grow internationally, but I still see so much space for us here in South Africa and solving these problems.
Amazing. So I have a question to ask you about, because naturally the tech space in particular, hugely male dominated. And even as the startup club, the reality is I'm a white male. I can't change that. But nonetheless, we build super intentionally to make sure we've got inclusivity and equal opportunity and all these things. But what I like to do is ask female founders about their experience and just to be candid about, maybe paint a picture for us about the realities of the differences that we, non-female founders might not be seeing. Or talk to us about your experience as a female founder, especially a young female founder.
It's so funny because sometimes I forget that I'm a female in a male-dominated.
Yes.
When you just have you seen those animals that just they start hanging out like a dog hanging out with a zebra, and then he just thinks he's a zebra now? You kind of just forget, And I do think that I do sometimes get to that space, and I forget there have absolutely been really difficult moments, and there still are. There's still times where the ease of having a conversation with a male in the logistics space is sometimes a lot harder for me. But I kind of just it is what it is, right? I also love being a female, and I think that women bring such a unique perspective and energy into this business space. I also love male founders, right? They also bring such a unique, we both have such unique gifts and things to learn from, and from each other, right? I mean, as women, I think we have so much to learn from men. I think men come in a lot more confidently, and they have a lot of strengths that maybe we, women will, I think, wait a lot more time before they'll take investment because they don't think that they're ready. So there are all of these things of needing it to be perfect or needing to be ready or not feeling confident enough that I think women struggle with. And this is obviously being very general.
No, but in the same respect, men could use with, generalistically speaking, a lot more patience, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think there's so much value in having diverse founding teams.
Yes. So I think there are pros and cons to investing in male and female founders, right? So I think both come with a set of strengths. I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are, right? There's sometimes, maybe I need to err on the side of caring too much about the people and focus also, on the profits. There's these things where men can sometimes be better at the ones and zeros and like, you know, and so I sometimes try tap into like, cool, this is what you know, a male founder would do in the scenario. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
It does, and I think it obviously goes without saying we are having you on as a great founder, irrespective of being female or male. Your story is just so remarkably inspiring, and so I think that's the value here. We alluded very briefly to founding teams, and I want to just quickly talk to you about, it's been a couple of years you've been a solo founder, and you've really, especially through the scaling season of Loop, naturally investors are looking at solo founders and saying, well, you know, we appreciate that no founder really has all of those different traits we've just spoken about, and so we could de-risk this by just investing into founding teams of 2 or more. What are some of the things maybe you do to protect against that solo founder risk? And it could be in the team you build, it could be in a whole bunch of things personally you do to try and upskill yourself. Maybe talk to us about also how you've just managed being a solo founder, because emotionally you're carrying almost the full weight, right? And the responsibility.
So, I mean, I have a team around me that are just so great at the things that I'm not great at. And I haven't always done it deliberately, but it's happened. You know, we did an assessment of everyone's personality, and I can't tell you how I've like 2 very distinct personalities in my team, and they're incredible, and they're different to me in very specific ways. They're so good at specific things, and like I celebrate discomfort and conflict almost. Like you know, my team, I work with women who have strong opinions, who voice those opinions with me, I don't shy away from like working with people who think and work differently to me, where I annoy them, right? And like understanding like these are my blind spots. So I think that's helped a lot, you know, in surrounding myself with people who are more structured, better planners, more detail orientated in some ways. So like there's definitely, that's helped a lot. And it's made this journey more enjoyable, right? From being a solo founder to having more people around me that allow me to be more creative, that allow me to kind of sit within my zone of genius and like the things that I enjoy, has made this a lot more enjoyable, and has to some degree taken the weight off, you know, of needing to be everything. I know what my strengths are, and I don't need to be, you know, I have people in my team who are just so good, like at like things, I don't know, like corporate things. They're just so good at it. They just, and I'm just not. And at times I find it intimidating. I'm like, wow, like you are a lot. You probably would be a better CEO than me, right? Like you just are so much better at these things. But I kind of just, you know, try not feel insecure and feel really just grateful that I have this person who is so amazing at this thing. And I know that it allows me to be more me, to focus on the things that I'm even better at.
Amazing. Yeah. What do you think's making those people join? Because one of the big challenges many of the startups in our audience have is they might even build world-class tech, and they might even raise decent investment. Very few startups sub 3 or 5 years are able to pay the corporate equivalent salary, right? So you're having to incentivize folks on a lot more than just the salary. But what do you think has been Loop's key hook or key to success? I mean, you've got 21 highly capable people now working in this business. Or is it just you, Kim?
I do think that you're selling internally as much as you're selling externally, like, and maybe that's one of the gifts of being a woman, right? I feel like, you know, if you think of the mom energy, like, you know, they're like, is everybody happy? They want to make sure and I think that maybe more nurturing energy that women founders can bring can sometimes breed a lot of loyalty within their teams. And these are like, I guess, again, the things that men and women can like hold on to and learn from each other in the space. I mean, I think you do need to. I think with everything, I'm about giving my team as much value as they're giving me, right? If not more. I kind of always want to make sure that they're getting more.
Yeah.
I know it sounds silly, but I'm like, I need to negotiate hard contracts with my clients so that I can always pay my team really well. So there's all of these things, like,
not silly at all. Refreshing.
I think you see so many businesses where they're like, they don't negotiate well with clients, and then they're like, well, we can't only afford to pay you that. Well, I mean, no, it's kind of your job to have negotiated a better contract, because people deserve to be paid what they're worth, so maybe a little bit of all of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's also strongly you, Kim. but in the best sense, right? So because I think there's certainly having a galvanizing leader at the front of the business, steering the ship and casting the vision, and makes a massive difference.
Can I add one thing there?
Please.
I also think that my team is amazing, and that also helps.
It makes you a better leader, probably.
And I think everyone else who joins is so, I don't feel like I'm as involved anymore. Whereas if I look at like Kerry and Nadine, who head up two important parts of my business, they're such incredible leaders. And I feel like their teams are so like excited and challenged in the right ways, and like cared for, like all of these things. So I think what I'm very kind and fair, but I'm also very like, I don't take, like, if you're not right for the business, I'm not gonna be like, it's okay.
Sure.
I actually am quite black and white when it comes to the right people in the business, because like, I feel like you get product market fit, and then you need to get product market people fit.
Sure.
And that is so important. I mean, the success of where we are now is because of the people I have in the business. The reason why Loop has this brand feel, it's not me, it's Kerry who built that. Like there's the products and the engineering side, that's Nadine, and it's the engineers in our team. Like, they're the ones who drive the innovation, and like, it's, I literally couldn't do it. It is what it is because of them. So I think that also helps, is I don't have to do as much of the heavy
culture
lifting.
Building as well. Yeah,
it's just like kind of there. They all do it themselves.
Awesome. Yeah, but also said like a good CEO. I think so. No, listen, we're only as good, of course, as the teams we build. One of the last questions that I wanted to ask from the audience is around common things you see founders doing wrong. I'm sure you're getting approached by a lot of founders, men and female alike, who've admired the journey. They may not know all these nuances, but they want to get into the space. They've got an idea. Maybe they even post product. They're looking at raising some capital. What is one of the big things you see people doing wrong constantly that you wish, if you had an audience and a vehicle to tell them, man, maybe this could be it, perhaps the podcast. So what is maybe something you see?
I think taking too long to go to market, like building too much or waiting for the perfect product. I think there's a lot of, just that, just like not, it's just getting more and more funding, like raise another round and another round. And I think, and focusing too much on raising versus, does this product make sense? Like, is there a commercial model that makes sense, that's scalable? Like, and I think I see a lot of founders kind of just delaying that process of, you just need to get to market and you need to make the mistakes and see what you need to change as quickly as possible. That I think would be one big thing.
Yeah, great.
Maybe a bit of like entitlement sometimes. Sometimes I get LinkedIn messages, or I see how I've called out a few founders who now work with your clients, but I've been like, that is not a way that you're going to negotiate. Sure. Not with me. I don't know if that's working with anyone else, but I'm just like, it's a shame. I don't want to out who it is, but literally give me a better pricing or I'm going to replicate your software. like as blatant as that. I was like, okay. You can go replicate the software.
Yes.
But if I could advise, I don't think this is a great strategy for negotiating. So I think people don't have to respond to your messages. They don't have to answer your calls. So you kind of have to learn ways of asking for things that in some ways going to deliver value to them or surprise them. I don't know, but it's like this kind of entitled expectation of that it should be mine.
Kim, I think just as we almost wrap up in the last few minutes that we have, talk to us about Loop today and some of the short-term prospects. It's an exciting time. It sounds like you've got a great team around you, building good culture, good customer momentum. Where are we at, and where can we see Loop in the next 6 to 12 months?
So, I mean, it's been a tough 18 months. Just with some internal partner stuff, and I think we're at the end of that, which I'm really, really excited about, and hopefully one day I can come back on your podcast and tell you all about it. Because I think it's a big part of the journey.
Yes.
But I think we're looking at closing with a new direction with a strategic partner.
Amazing.
and I think that's really exciting. And I'm really excited about that because I kind of want, I love this business and where it's gotten to, and don't get me wrong, there's so many challenges, and I think as a founder, you're always paranoid about where the risks and how you could lose all of this, because it does feel like it could be gone in a second. But I'm really excited about this next chapter of Loop and these new challenges of scaling. We've got now 2 products, Loop on-demand delivery and Loop logistics. How do we scale that in South Africa, internationally? So what are those challenges? I mean, those are chapters and roads I've never ever traveled, and excited to travel them alongside people who have done the work, right? I think in the last 18 months, I've been very intentional about choosing people who, it's not always just about the money, right? It's about people who have been on the same journey, taking a business from South Africa outside, doing that physical work it's not something that everyone's done. And so how do you do that? And so whether we're successful in that or not, I don't know, but I think that's where will be the next 12 to 18 months.
Amazing.
Going forward.
A future episode.
Yes.
Booked in the calendar for a few years' time. Kim, the final question I like to ask all founders really speaks to kind of the why behind all of this, right? And it's what does success look like for Kimberley Taylor? And we're not going to hold it against you. Some founders want to have a massive exit and live on a yacht and do their thing. Others are doing this for different reasons. And so I'm always curious, and so is our audience, to just ask the question, what does success look like for Kim? Yeah.
It's so funny because that changes all the time. Can I tell you really honestly? I can tell you now, honestly, 2 years ago, my why was a lot to I needed to feel special and be lovable. It's the most, to be honest, vulnerable part of me. And it's interesting, as all of that happened, right? This business got a level of success and this focus. I was actually, that's not fulfilling at all. I guess how some people experience where they did it for the money, and then they made the money and they're oh, that's not fulfilling at all. And so not that was my only why. I have a deep, I feel like I was born with this deep sensitivity to suffering, and there's things that really, really weigh on my heart. And so there's a part of me that knows my purpose is around people and solving problems, and some tough problems, which is part of my why, and part of, I think, what will make me feel successful is really making a macro difference. I think that's the other thing that maybe it's ego. Sometimes I was how can I solve this problem for as many people as possible? Like I'm like, I don't want to just solve it for one person. And so there's a big part of that. But I feel like the other parts change, like,
Sure.
I think there's a part that has always been family and like being a mom. And I think that will feel as purposeful. And it might just be like a biological thing that as a woman, you feel like you can't wait to be a mom. But I find it's changing all the time, different things. I feel, and maybe to go back, I felt like I would feel successful and I'd feel okay when I knew I was special. When basically when I got the affirmation from everyone that I was special. And then you realize, no, like that's not it. And now I feel successful. Like every day we're in this team. I think I don't want to do it for any other reason that I just want to try and do it with these people for as long as possible, because I love my team. And I'm, it's just every single day, every single week we're still around, that feels like success. It doesn't always feel like success. You always want more. There's always this like battle of, more money. Can we land more clients?
Sure.
And I'm at the moment figuring that out. Like when is it enough? Because I think I have a strong value of freedom and I love options, right? So not wanting and having felt what it feels like to not have, and to be wanting of anything, like not having enough money or, so I think there's always a level of like, you want that financial freedom. So I know that's not a full answer, but it's a bit of like a roundabout.
It is such a great answer because honestly, I think myself and the audience included are just going to so value your transparency here, because it's almost like you're articulating what most people feel and navigating it and figuring it out. So it's amazing to have you on today. Of course, we wish you all the very best with this next season of Loop. We'll be following closely. Loop.co.za for anyone in the audience. Ladies and gents, that's Kimberley Taylor, founder and CEO of Loop. Thanks for being on today, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. That was Kimberley Taylor, founder and CEO of Loop. I'm Matthew Marsden, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our socials, and share with your network. See you next time.